there was a bunch of people who just had to shift. And that's kind of what we're going to see here. Is if you're going through all those documents and you're reading 1,000 pages, or even if you're like skimming through 1,000 pages to find something every single time, you're using a record player when you got an MP3 player. Like, you don't need to do that anymore. You could even submit the documents if you don't want to demand. Just submit us 60 documents, 1,000 page each, and upload it. And within 30 minutes, you could get the summaries.
Welcome to Just Settled. On today's episode, we have an incredible guest with us, Amitai Erfanian, the CTO of LawPractice.AI. Amitai, welcome to Just Settled. So great to have you here today.
It's great to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, and tell us a little bit about LPAI or LawPractice.AI. I think this is just a really interesting new company that we, want to kind of introduce our audience to, and tell us kind of the overview of what LPAI is and what you guys do.
So us at LPAI, we make software for law firms, and there's a huge focus on AI, hence the name. Right now we have actually out a demand letter writer that's completely AI, and it uses our doc reader, which is another product we have out, that reads documents, and from those documents is able to draft demands in like minutes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So for a law firm, they would be part of this portal and be able to kind of log in and use this, or how would they get access to be able to use this technology?
So it's actually very easy. You go right onto our website, MyLawFirm.AI, and there's a sign up button. You sign up, put on your credit card, and you can go and generate demands. It's very simple.
And so I know that in these kinds of documents, there's usually like medical records and stuff, right? How does that work with the software?
So on a more intricate level, it's a little bit complicated, but like the basic high level version of it is that we take in a form, effectively like an intake form. You upload some of the details of the case that you're about to write a demand for, upload your documents, you tag them as like a medical record or a medical bill or a police report or a witness statement. And then our system will go in there, read them, extract the data, generate some summaries, and we make those summaries available to our clients. And then we write our demand based off those summaries.
Awesome. So can you tell us a little bit about how were law firms doing this until now? Like, what is the precedent, or how were law firms doing this for the past decades, and how is this different from how they were doing it before?
For sure. So there's a couple of things. One is they would either outsource it to a third-party company that would write a demand, draft a letter, and send it back to them, or they would do it in-house, and they'd have a demand writer who would type on their machine and review these documents, and it would take hours, but they'd get a good demand out. And that has been the gold standard for the past 100 years of how you'd write these letters.
Okay.
And we've kind of come in there, and the whole difference is that rather than getting your first draft, second draft out in a couple hours, we're going to give it to you within a couple minutes, and the drafts afterward will take even less time. So your whole demand writing process is 30 to 45 minutes on each demand.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you're literally cutting hours and hours and even days off the process in terms of doing these things.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
What about in terms of cost? Like if someone was paying for, I'm assuming the attorney themselves weren't typically doing this. Was it a case manager or a paralegal? Who was the person at these firms that was typically drafting all this up and organizing everything and doing it manually?
They have a few paralegals, and usually it'd be either paralegal or it'd be a demand writer. They have some people who are just specialized in writing this who aren't necessarily a paralegal, but it'd be someone like that. And then, so the cost difference is also a big point, like you brought up. It's, since you don't spend all those hours with a person, you can send your demand in, go get a coffee, have a bagel, and then come back, and your demand will be done. You don't have to sit there and work on it.
Yeah.
So the cost savings is huge. You probably still need a person to look it over, but you don't have to sit there.
Yeah, and touching on that, because you're saying the person looking over, that's about accuracy, right? And making sure that it reads perfectly and everything. I mean, can you speak a little bit to the technology that LPAI, LawPractice.AI, offers to ensure accuracy or to ensure that these things read well to somebody who's looking at it?
For sure, there's a bunch of things we implemented. So the first thing we have is obviously you've got your model. So you can take GPT, you could take Llama, you could take one of these models off the shelf. We have a model we've taken and we've edited it since then. So we've kind of taught it a little bit, not on any medical records or anything like that, but we've taught it aside from that with different tools. And then after you take that model, there's a set of guide rails that we've built for it so that it doesn't mess up numbers, so that it gets the facility name correctly. We've built a whole algorithm so that we can normalize facility names. So like your La Cienega Hospital, for example, it shows up as that hospital, and it doesn't, even though the bill might say some other name, it can still cross-reference the two as the same. Humans can do that very fast, but a machine, obviously, it's a little different.
Yeah.
The other stuff that we've implemented is like for the accuracy of extracting medical summaries. You could upload like a 1,000-page document, and our system's got to go in there and read every page. With a person, you've got some mistakes that you could make too. You could read 8 as a 3 or vice versa. And the machine can do that. It does make some mistakes. We put in guardrails to, cross-check, fact-check, and all that. But it does still make some mistakes. We have a whole revision and approval process so that the attorney can come in there or the paralegal can come in there and say, oh, I actually know that this document, according to the summary or according to the actual document itself, said this, rewrite this portion to reflect that.
What about like HIPAA compliance? Because I know that's a big thing, right? With these medical records, they have to be HIPAA compliant. How does the technology on Law Practice AI ensure that the actual documents themselves are HIPAA compliant when they are processed?
That's a huge one. So one of the things that is a common misconception is that a lot of people use ChatGPT and just upload medical records or medical bills. And that's completely not HIPAA compliant, and you could lose your license for doing so.
Yeah.
So one of the things we wanted to make sure, we wanted to get like nailed down, is that none of your data is going to be moved anywhere, like you said, and that everything was going to be compliant with the federal laws and so on and so forth with confidentiality. So one of the things we did is we have our models actually don't learn anything from the data you send. We spin up the model, we run your little document through it, and then we shut down that model and spin it up again. Okay. So even your demand that you're writing or you're sending through our system might actually go through like 40 models that are all brand new and all off the shelf that it didn't have memory. They don't retain anything. Additionally, we're on HIPAA compliant servers, so all your data is vaulted, encrypted. I actually, if you upload a document to our platform, I, as even one of the developers or the architect of this system, I can't actually see any of the documents you uploaded. I can't see the demand you generated. And that's also because of confidentiality.
Sure.
You don't want me seeing your medical record or your client attorney privileged documents.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's interesting. And it sounds like you guys really kind of were very thoughtful and strategic when you were building this. Can you tell us a little bit about your background? How did you kind of come into AI as a tool and a software? How did you come into this industry, and like what drew you into it? And kind of, if you could just speak to a little bit of your background and kind of how you came here.
I'll give you the short story. I was much younger. I was like 11. And when I was 11, my mom was looking for things for me to do. Like when you're an 11-year-old, your mom puts you in like soccer. And you're like, no, I don't want to play soccer. So she put me into this robotics place and I hated it. I said, I never want to touch software again. So I left. And the owner of the place is Great Minds, the owner called my mom and was like, I actually think your son should try something else out. So he put me on this different class and he taught me directly. And we were there for like 4 or 5 hours. And ever since that day, I'd been like super, super passionate about software. And it was an amazing experience. I was doing software since 11 all the way until 18, went to college. And college is where AI was really first introduced to me because it wasn't as big when I was younger. So in college, I started writing some papers, doing some research with a couple of professors, and that's where my interest in AI was born.
Yeah, that's really cool. Can you tell us a little bit about the Law Practice AI team and how you guys got to this point? Because you're live now, right? You're actually ready to go. Law firms can sign on right now and get this. How did the team kind of cross any creative hurdles? How did you guys overcome obstacles to get to this really exciting point for Law Practice AI where you are now, servicing law firms with this?
So that's actually a great question. Nothing great is ever done with one person. There's always a team, like you mentioned. And our team, there's been multiple hurdles. One of them is getting it to be accurate with the medical records it reads. The way that we overcame those hurdles were we kind of put everybody on a call and we're like, here's the problem, let's get some ideas out. And no idea is a bad idea. Even if they say something that's like, completely out there, like it sounds like science fiction, it's never a bad idea. You just got to get the ball rolling. And then after the ball starts rolling, some people come up with really, really good ideas. Yeah. And it can be from anyone. You could have someone on one team come up with an idea for something that the other team's going to implement. And that's the beauty of getting everybody on a call. We do that about every 2 weeks or so. To get everybody on a call, let's come up with the ideas of how we're going to fix the problems for our next sprint. And Like I said, some of them were the medical records. Getting them to extract and not hallucinate was a huge thing. And when I say hallucinate, I mean generate just random medical treatments that didn't exist. And so locking that down, having potentially multiple models read it and then fact check each other, that was one of the ideas that actually I didn't even come up with. It was completely our team, and highlights the importance of that team.
That's awesome. Can you tell us a little bit just about the timeline from the beginning to end? What did it look like from ideation of this idea for Law Practice AI to launch? What was that timeline?
So it's just been a little over a year, and the original idea at first was like, we're going to automate demand letters. And that idea was scary. It's jarring. It's like, well, how do you even get to write, like, what does it look like? What are all the intricacies of producing that letter? How can I almost make the machine think as though it's a human? It's kind of hard, but it's also kind of ridiculous at first. And once you start splitting it into smaller problems, that was the first step. It was just split it into smaller problems. And then every couple weeks, every 2 weeks was, okay, we got problem 1 of like 50 done. We got problem 2 of 50 done. And then you kept going down that timeline. And obviously things come up, but you pivot, you mitigate, you kind of wear a couple different hats and you get it through.
Yeah. In terms of just like technology becoming obsolete and industries being disrupted by something, and then we're in like a whole new wave, right? This is another, I feel like we're at that crossroad. AI is obviously in the zeitgeist, super in the public consciousness and conversation right now. When I was a kid, we used VCRs, and then there was DVD players and Blu-ray, and then everything went to streaming. And it's interesting how these actual pieces of technology just become completely outdated, where nobody would even think to use them anymore for a multitude of reasons. Can you speak a little bit to that here? For law firms, like what are they doing now that feels like it's caveman days type of thing, where they're going to look back and say, I can't believe we did it this way? And how does Law Practice AI kind of provide that solution where it is the streaming service versus the VCR, where you're like generations ahead of where we were even a couple of years ago?
Yeah, I mean, one of the big things, I was actually walking down to the office the other day, and someone in the office was like, we've kind of just built the typewriter from the like printing press and moved it forward. But also at the same time, you think back to like when that happened, when you read about it in history, it was like there was a bunch of people who just had to shift. And that's kind of what we're going to see here, is that if you're going through all those documents and you're reading 1,000 pages, or even if you're like skimming through 1,000 pages to find something every single time, you're using a record player when you got an MP3 player. Like you don't need to do that anymore. You can even submit the documents if you don't want to demand. Just submit us 60 documents, 1,000-page each, and upload it. And within 30 minutes, you could get the summaries, so that you don't have to run through, 10,000 pages and find what you're looking for. You can search it, you can filter it. It's also a smart search, so you can smart search it. And so that's kind of the shift you're seeing, is that a lot of the, I want to call them mundane tasks, are gonna kind of get eliminated. And it's actually for the benefit of the firm and the paralegals who used to write this. I'm sure nobody wanted to look through 1,000 pages to find the date of service for like a specific treatment or the bill amount. Nobody wanted to see that. So instead of doing that, you can go and focus on the legal frames if you're going to take it to court, or the other steps that you can take, your intake, all that other stuff.
I was going to ask you to elevator pitch Law Practice AI, but I feel like you just basically did. That is a very good summary of why people and law firms are going to move towards this and not be doing things the old way anymore. It's also a lot less expensive, right? I mean, they're literally saving a huge amount on cost. Can you tell the audience where they can find Law Practice AI? Where are you guys at right now? Just so that for any audience, lawyers that are listening to this, you want to look into this, Amitai, tell them where they can find it.
You can find it at MyLawFirm.AI. There's an access portal button. Click that and you can sign right up right now.
Amitai, I wish you the best. I hope you come back on and visit us again one day when you guys are just blown up and every law firm in the United States is using you. Really excited to see what Law Practice AI is going to bring to the industry.
Thank you. So am I, and I appreciate being here.